Welcome back and thank you for tuning in again. And in this one we're going to be creating this part in 3D using Inventor. Now this is a cylindrical part, so that's kind of your precursor to know which command we're going to use. So if you're looking at cylindrical parts, just remember that. Kind of think of your niche or whatever you're creating here as a revolve. And like I always say, when you're creating a revolve, think about creating half of a half. That's all you're going to need to create that full revolve. So let's jump over to Inventor and get started. Okay, let's go ahead and use the new icon here. It's going to bring open our templates. This time it will be a inches template, so I'm going to select the English one. And I'm going to use the standard inch IPT. So that's the one that we're going to use. Let's go ahead and double click on that. And then we're going to give Inventor a little bit of time to load up and switch over and be ready for us to use. Okay, so once you're good to go, let's go ahead and create a regular 2D sketch here. And now we're going to determine which of the planes that we're going to create. So remember, we're going to ideally want to spin this around the y-axis. So therefore, I can use the XY plane here, or I can use the YZ plane. So either one of those planes you select is going to be okay. And in our terms, I'm just going to use the XY one. Alright, I do know the overall height of this one, so I'm going to go ahead and create a line. Just make it vertical. And then the height of that line is going to be 2. So I'm just pointing down and giving it a length of 2. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this line from its midpoint right on our center point here. So I'm going to use the coincidence. I'm going to select the midpoint on this line. And I'm going to select our center point. Alright, I'm going to escape out of that. Then I'll select this line. And then I'll make it a center line. Alright, so that's going to help us out a lot. We already have our center line defined. Let's go ahead and create some other lines on here. So let's choose the line. I'm going to select somewhere along this line. Click here, and go down at an angle, and then out to here. Alright, so now that I have that created, let's go ahead and put some dimensions on. So I'll use a dimension from this line here to here, and that number should be 0.1. And we also have some other dimensions to put on here. Remember, the benefit of making this a center line is so we get diameter dimensions. So select your center line here and select this point. Go ahead and place your dimension. And this number should be 0.2. Let's do the next one. Let's go a dimension from the center line again to this endpoint. And let's make that 1.05. And let's place one more on here. Let's do a dimension from this line here to over here. And this is 1.25. Alright, now we have that. I want to also make sure that this horizontal line is in line with our endpoint of our line here. So I'm going to use a coincidence for that. And I'm just going to select this line. And I'll select this endpoint. Alright, so now we have the coincidence for that one set. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. To create my next point here, and I got 2 different ways I can do that, right? I'm just going to pull this down a little bit. I can either create a couple of vertical and horizontal lines, or I can create a line up here and create that arc along it. I think in our case, let's go ahead and create the 2 lines, and it'll make it a little bit easier for us. So let's draw a line from this endpoint. Try not to keep it in line with anything else, and then go straight up from here. Let's go ahead and put a few dimensions on this. So let's use a dimension from this line here to our center line. And that diameter dimension should be 0.6. Let's put a dimension on here. That is going to be 0.2. And then we have an overall height of here, which is from this bottom line here to our top of that endpoint here. We have that dimension set at 1.1. Alright, so we have all of our dimensions that we need to create this. Let's go ahead and put a fillet on here. Our radius is 1. Then I'm just going to select this line and then this line. Now you can see that that jumps us off. So you can take a look at that and go like, well, that didn't work. So it's a lot easier sometimes just to come back and undo it and say, okay, because it tries to put the center where you want it. We can also use this 3-point arc, which is going to help define it a little bit more. It'll give the center a chance to be free. So I could select this endpoint somewhere along this line up here, and then I can kind of bend this a little bit. I'm going to add a tangent constraint from here to here, and then I'll be able to add a radius dimension. So click here, and then tell it 1. And this way I can define this a little bit more as opposed to letting that fillet. And the fillet, what it wants to do is create that 1 dimension, but it wants to control where the center is going to be. So by using that arc, I have a little bit more ability to control how I want this to be created. Let's go ahead and trim this portion off here. And now we have a leftover line here. I can go ahead and delete this line. And now we have our arc created here as what we need. Let's go ahead and put a couple more of our part on here. So I'm going to draw a line now from this endpoint going out this direction. And then just angle it up. Alright, try your best to avoid kind of lining it up with any other points or things of that nature. Let's go ahead and put a dimension on here from this line to this one. Then I'm going to place this arc dimension here and tell it that it is 157 degrees. Alright, here along the top, I'm just going to draw a circle somewhere along this line. Now remember, I can define some of the other stuff later on. So I'm going to use a coincidence and say this endpoint is on the top of this line. Or sorry, on the top of that circle. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is use the trim command. And I'm just going to trim off this portion. Let's go ahead and put a dimension on this one. And I'm just going to use the dimension, select here. Now this one has a diameter dimension of 0.75. So I can either do the math or right when I'll have to escape out of this and do this one again. And I just noticed it was a diameter dimension. So you can either do the math and type in half of 0.75 in our cases, which is what, 0.375. Or we can have Inventor do it. And I'll show you both ways actually. So like we did before, if I place it here, it's looking for that. I can type in the actual mathematics for it, which is 0.75 divided by 0.2, and that'll work if you didn't know the math that was 0.375. Or the second option would be is that when I'm going to the dimension and I place the dimension here and it's still reading the diameter dimension, or sorry, in our case a radius dimension, I can right click before I place it, change the dimension type, and then tell it that I want to use a diameter dimension, and then I can type in the 0.75. So either way works. Let's go ahead and trim a couple of these lines. So I can trim here and here. And then I'm just kind of trying to figure out what else do I need to put on this for it to be fully constrained. And then we'll place our final dimension on here, which will be a dimension from that endpoint, or sorry, that line, to this endpoint here. Once I place it here, I'll type in 1.3. And now everything is fully constrained. Alright, so this should go really easy on the next step. I see that it has one profile, and it also has one center axis. And what I mean by profile is if I had a line connected from here going across, that'll make this its own profile as well as the bottom. But since it's all open here, it should be one profile. Let's go ahead and finish sketch. Let's take a look at the revolve command. And it should be able to pick both of them for us, so we shouldn't have to do anything. It should be able to define the plane and the axis. And I just noticed that I do have one more fillet to put on here, and I could have done the fillet actually inside of the sketch command. But I like to try to keep my fillets in one command. So I'm going to go and use the fillet command next. And then I'm going to put the fillet of 0.01. And I'm just going to zoom into this sharp corner and click that. Go and hit OK. Go ahead and take a look at this on the front view. Now you can see that this one is totally complete. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed seeing me create this one, and if there's anything you would like to see me create, or maybe you have a better way of doing this, please feel free to leave me a comment. And I enjoyed doing this, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.